all across this great state of Iowa. This is the Simon Conway Show. My name is Jeff Angelo, sitting in for Simon Conway. Interesting week for Joe Biden. So those pictures and videos that we've seen for a long time came back on Joe in the past week. Him stroking people's hair, smelling their hair, rubbing their shoulders. And Joe Biden said, oh, look, I understand it is a different time. So is the Me Too movement redefining what we know as personal space? That is what Joe Biden brought up in his video in responding to all the attention to the things that he's done before. I wanted to talk to business coach Kelly Accetta about this because Kelly is dealing with these changes in the business world rather than just the political world. Kelly, welcome back to WHO Radio. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Kelly, what do you think? Has our definition of personal space actually changed? And, of course, we could keep this as a political discussion, but you're in the business world, and I wanted to make it a bigger discussion about the cultural impacts of Me Too. Are we changing in how we interact with each other?
Well, actually, it's not necessarily that we're redefining personal space. It's just actually coming to attention. We as women have been dealing with this for a very long time. Sure. And, you know, unfortunately, we had to kind of just take it and endure it. And a lot of times it's belittling. And the woman that Joe Biden kissed on the head right before she walked out on stage, she was running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, I got you.
It's just, you know, that kind of a thing is just, it's belittling, it's degrading. And, you know, it really boils down to, I've studied human behavior and taught on, basically, there's 4 personality types. There's a lot of personality tests out there, the DISC, all the different ones, anagrams. There's a lot of personality tests out there. I can concentrate, when I coach, I concentrate on 4. And there are 2 out of the 4 personality types that value their personal space.
Sure.
Do not cross their line of personal space unless you are invited in. And that's what really it boils down to, is we have to stop assuming just because we like to hug that other people like to hug. We have to stop assuming that everyone around us is like us. And that's really kind of what you're starting to see in this movement of women finally speaking up and saying, hey, that's not cool.
Well, and Kelly, I think you've nailed it there, and that's why I wanted to talk to you in a broader context than just the political implications, because there's so many things that go on in everyday life. When I watched the Joe Biden video where he's explaining it, my impression was he was, hey, I'm a touchy-feely guy. I'm just comforting people. And you probably have heard that in the office. The other thing that always makes me pause and think about my interactions with women in my office is what you said about, and we've had to take it. And now we're speaking out. And that is changing the culture in our offices, I hope. Do you think so?
I do, unless the men in the higher positions are not sensitive to it. There are men that still feel like, you know, they have the right to do whatever they want to do, and that's starting to go away because more and more women are speaking up and saying, you know, and we don't need to speak up in a negative way. We can take somebody aside and say, look, I know you probably don't realize this, but the way you touched me on the back was really not cool. Yeah. So please don't do that again. We don't have to be jerks about it. Again, when someone is an affectionate person, a naturally affectionate person, I know a lot of men that are just naturally affectionate, and they really don't understand what they're doing to offend women. So it's as important, if you are an affectionate person, that you ask. That's all you need to do, is say, hey, you know what? You did a great job. Do you mind if I give you a hug? Yeah. If you're dealing with a woman who values her personal space, she'll say, nope, a handshake will do just fine.
Right. And you can't be offended by that. Oh, well, but I'm a hugger. You have to understand that person is taking the gratitude you're showing with the handshake equally as well as they would if you hugged them.
Exactly. So it is important for men to ask in this climate, in this day and age, because, again, you just don't know if, and also with men, when I'm talking about these 4 personality types, the 2 that value their personal space, the men and the women in these 2 personality types value their personal space. So if you're a hugger and you go in for a hug, even with the men that you're working with, you make feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not just the women. So it's just, again, just because you like to show affection, it doesn't mean that someone who values their personal space has to entertain you.
And it has to be verbally committed, because I'll tell you what's been happening to me, Kelly, which is with this cultural change, if I am introduced to a woman in a business setting, I put my hand out. Now, oftentimes the woman will initiate the hug. And therefore, if they initiate it, I personally am okay with that, but I don't initiate anymore myself. But you're right that in most situations, both people should be able to verbally communicate what they want, right?
You know what? Our whole society would be a whole lot better if we just talked to each other and expressed our feelings. You know, yes, the men have to ask if it's all right. Hey, can I give you a hug? I really want to congratulate you. No, a handshake will be fine. We as women have to be honest when we respond. If we say, oh, sure, and they give us a hug and then we're irritated by it, that's our fault. You know, if we go in for a hug and they hug us back, that's just unfair to be upset with a man, you know, in that regard. So we just have to communicate, men and women. Some men that are going to be listening to this are like, yes, I hate it that my boss hugs me all the time. So, again, it's not necessarily a gender thing. It's a lot of times a personality thing. I just did a workshop on Saturday, and the personality that I'm talking about is a very driven, aggressive personality type. They value their personal space. And she was sharing something very emotional. And the two people that got up had a very affectionate personality type. They're the huggers. They're one of the 2 personality types that like to hug and touch and feel. And they came over and gave her a hug while she was talking. And you should have seen her countenance. It was like somebody just slimed her. Yeah. She was just grossed out. She's like, get off of me. So it's not necessarily just a gender thing. Obviously, men being inappropriate in the workplace, I mean, that's just something you've got to handle immediately. But even when it boils down to just physical touch, there are 2 personalities out of the 4 that don't like it. So you can't just assume it's okay.
Business coach Kelly Accetta, always appreciate talking to Kelly with real world insight. Kelly, thanks for joining me. Let's talk again soon.